What was your first experience going to the movies? The question seems simple enough, but if you're anything like me, you may have gone to the movie theater hundreds or thousands of times. But which one was the first? For me, it was Terminator 2 at the theater at the Regency Mall back in my hometown. It was 34 years ago, but I can still feel the excitement of getting the tickets, grabbing snacks, and making the way to our seats with my mom. And we all know how good the movie was. Ever since then, the movies has been a magical place for me. Give me a good concept, a director with a keen eye, and a place and a time, I'm there. But with the world being what it is now, some people said the movies, and by extension the film industry, have become soulless vacuums. Where we were once taken to fantastic locales like Middle Earth, Narnia, and Xanadu, we're now transported to realities that are figuratively and literally darker than our current timeline. The balance is off. No bold new ideas coming through, only tried and true formulas get greenlit. As a result, only sequels, series, or sure things. And don't get me started about the streamers and all of their ripple effects. But the summer is supposed to be different. That's when all of the biggest blockbusters drop. And 2025 was busy. At one point, I found myself at the theater once a week. Were the movies any good though? Today, I'm going to share my thoughts about a couple of the big tentpole movies this summer. A couple of horror movies, and the worst movie on a legendary director and actor's combined filmography. I'm CapnTrippz. Let's talk movies. So for me, right, there was nothing bad about the movie. My rating scale as I look at it is 5 stars is a phenomenal movie. It's probably a just great cinematography, great writing, great acting, a culmination of all three pillars and everybody bringing their A game. A 4-star movie for me is a great movie. It's a great movie. It's memorable. It's something that I would probably want to see again. So using that, right? Using that 4 stars is a great movie. I think 3 stars is a good movie. And maybe it's just me. I have issues making a movie like using half or 3/4 stars on the app. So if anything, I would have rated it a 3.75 if I really could have, because I thought it was a good movie. I don't think that it was a great movie. I think that while I liked the idea of, and I'm trying to keep this as light as possible. I like the idea of the movie starting pretty much with Superman's life as a hero already in progress. I also still thought there was a lot that they just did not explain, right? And it's okay for me because I'm a comic book nerd. I know certain things about Superman, even though I don't read Superman. I know that there are people who read Superman out there that know everything there is to know about Superman, and they picked up on every hint and every mention at the first glance, right? My Superman knowledge was when I read the comics when in the 90s and Smallville. I think that's pretty much where it ends. I thought I liked Lex Luger. I know people who didn't. Even still, there were things that just were not given the reverence that they should have because there was so much happening in the movie. There were beats where a line or situation is said to get a laugh response. And in my viewing, some of those fell flat. Why is Guy Gardner an asshole? Explain that to me. Not one, but 2 after credit scenes that served zero purpose whatsoever. Like, I ain't even talking about they didn't reveal anything or didn't hype anything up. They served no purpose whatsoever. You actually could have cut those from the movie and everything would have been all right. People would have had one less desktop wall saver, and an extra clip for a DVD. Matter of fact, halfway through the final fight scene, I saw that they were setting something up that they never really even really addressed yet. We probably won't get that call back for another 5 years or so. But I just was like, you know what? With what's here, I think this is a good start. I try not to give my first impressions too soon after seeing a movie. That being said, I stand behind everything I said in this clip from Stream last month. I feel that Superman was a good starting point for James Gunn and the DCU. There's a lot of space for Supes and the world around him to change, especially with the introduction of more metahumans to the mix. I think overall this film did three things. The first was establish the ethos of Superman. In the last 25 years, we've gotten multiple versions of Superman, and to be honest, none of them really worked, either because of a weak portrayal or because of weak writing. It also seemed that they didn't really get what makes Superman so super, right? I didn't have that problem with this movie. The action scenes were great, especially the flying, but it was solidified in some of the smaller moments of the movie. Maybe that's the real punk rock and all that. The second thing that this movie did was introduce memorable characters with their own lives. Rachel Brosnahan was great as Lois. She challenged Clark in ways that I thought felt natural to who the character was and not just as Superman's girlfriend, right? She's not going to take just anything from anyone. And in fact, I'd say that she drove a lot of the moments in this film as Supes was indisposed. I know that everybody's going to talk about Mr. Terrific, and rightly so. Bruh had a commanding presence in each scene and contributed to the balance of action and those lighter moments. And I know that Terrific jacket is going to hit the hood just like the crack epidemic. But please don't sleep on Jimmy Olsen. I'd definitely watch a show about either of those characters. The third thing that this movie did for me, at least, was show DC fans that the right guy got the job. James Gunn understands the source material. That should really be all I have to say here, but I'll go even further. It's not about what people think Superman should be these days or how dark or edgy he can get, but about the ideals and morals of the character and what makes him special. I've been riding with James Gunn ever since I saw Super right after graduating from college. This journey he's been on has been spectacular, but if Buddy can make me care about a talking tree or a raccoon with a hard on for guns, I know we can trust him with the keys to some of the biggest comic book IP out there. We're already getting rumblings of what Man of Tomorrow is about, and from what I hear, what I've heard, is that Superman and Lex Luthor will be working together against a common foe. And I'm already scratching my chin wondering who that is. If one movie had the result of sending couples straight into therapy for their attachment issues, it would have to be Together. Even before things started getting weird, you get a sense that the couple in the movie should just have an honest heart to heart. But that's just the thing. Things have already gone off the rails for them, and we're just tuning in at a precarious moment for them, moving into Dave Franco's recently deceased and committed parents' house. What unfolds over the next hour and change is a really funny and heartfelt relationship comedy slash body horror film. I think the marketing played up some of the horror aspects of the movie, but at its heart, it's a romantic comedy. And if anything, Allison and Dave have great chemistry. I mean, they're married, duh. There have been rumblings of this premise having been borrowed from another filmmaker, which would be a shame because this movie was fun. I would hate to think that they stole it wholeheartedly from another filmmaker, even though that ending left a little bit more to be desired. I had so many questions when the credits rolled. What's going on in this town? What happened with the ending? What happened after the ending? What happened with everybody else that everyone knew these people? Like, so much had happened. I stand by my rating. From the first time I saw this trailer, I knew that I'd be seated in theaters watching this once it dropped. Zach Cregger already had a hit on his hands a few years back with Barbarian, and while I thought the movie was okay, I ain't really get the hype. Weapons was definitely worth the hype, to me at least. I know that some people were thrown off by the non-linear storytelling. I mean, the film shifts between about 5 or 6 different characters' perspectives throughout, and it gives you just a little bit more of the puzzle each time. Of course, this isn't quite explained to viewers going in. I always advise that people let things play out a little bit more before getting frustrated, but that's me though. When we finally get to understand what's going on in the film, I was kind of let down. No spoilers as always, but I'm not sure if I was expecting more, but the disappointment I had went away quickly once that third act began. The ending was certainly up my alley, as all that happens at the end of the film is exactly what I wanted to happen once things came into focus. Now, I've spoken to a few people who were on the fence about this movie that, to me at least, the movie was more brutal than it was scary. Not that there wasn't moments that, sent chills up my spine. The car scene in particular definitely did that. But there were a lot more moments that started up laughing fits in the audience. And then when I later found out that Kreger got started with the Whitest Kids You Know comedy collective, it made perfect sense. There's something to be said about good horror movies that have a good balance of horror and humor. And this movie is definitely indicative of that. Again, to me. Strong 4 out of 5 to me, one of my top movies of the year so far. All right, now here's where I know people may come for me. I thought Fantastic Four was just all right. And this is coming from someone who considers himself a fan of both Marvel Comics and the MCU, and someone who grew up reading Fantastic Four. While I will say that the family looked and felt the most like the comics I read all those years ago, it being so far removed from the rest of the cinematic universe, until the very end at least, lowered the stakes somewhat. They did a great job of elevating Galactus to this big world-ending threat, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens when they come across that road again at some point in the future. I hope everybody had a good weekend at least. I started the weekend out with Fantastic Four. So here's my verdict on Fantastic Four while we're here, and if anybody cares. I think it was a good movie. If I'm being honest with you, I ranked it just a tad bit lower than Superman. I feel like where Superman had a lot of things going for it because it was Superman, they added, I feel like, extra hope to it. Fantastic Four was a great just view in whatever that was. Its own little universe, its own little part of the MCU. And I feel like, for me, right, the issue of why both of these movies I didn't rank them higher than where I ranked them was because, like, both of them had the issue of needing to set things up for later on. And I don't think that they did that properly, right? Whereas, like, yeah, we can look at this as a standalone thing by itself. But unfortunately, you can't do that because it needs to set up the bigger, start setting up the dominoes for the bigger stakes for a whole universe, and for us as fans of the MCU, about like, hey, there's some people with fatigue when it comes down to Marvel movies, and like, what are the stakes going into this next phase that we're raising up? I think, honestly, Jonathan Majors and his bullshit did a lot of damage to what could have been a great setup for a wider thing with Fantastic Four. Because when I think of the Fantastic Four, obviously Doctor Doom is who I'm thinking of, their biggest foil, and then Kang, I want to say, is like their actual biggest villain. Both of them were absent from this movie, and I feel like with that, and having to pivot to Galactus, it wasn't bad. It just was a tall task. Yeah, I'm not trying to spoil anything for anyone. So I will just, that's how light I'm gonna keep it. It's tall tasks. I will say that as a standalone thing, I thought it worked really well. I actually liked the chemistry between the characters a lot.
Yeah, I like the chemistry between the characters a lot. I was kind of put off by the number of product placements present in the movie. Not exactly product placements, but logos and brand placements. 1000%. Like, nigga, why?
Vanessa Kirby really did an amazing job as Sue. Eben Moss Barack is now the thing to me, the definitive thing. And I even came around to liking Joseph Quinn's take on Johnny Storm. I love how they portrayed him not only as girl crazy, but crazy smart. And I feel like they were the only ones to really do that. But I think when it comes down to Mr. Fantastic, I have a little bit of Pedro Pascal fatigue. He did fine as Mr. Fantastic, and overall, their interactions felt real in the midst of so much CGI. Like with Superman before it, I felt like this was a great beginning to something, but again, it'll be a while before it all pays off. Fantastic Four did just enough to be my second favorite Marvel film this year out of three. And here's the thing, everything can't be good, and everything can't be elevated by its parts. On paper, a film by Spike Lee featuring the incomparable Denzel Washington based off of an Akira Kurosawa classic should work. But let me tell you, it doesn't work here with Highest to Lowest, a remake of the 1960s Kurosawa film. This is probably the worst movie I've seen this year. First things first, I have to point out that Spike did not write this film. That honor belongs to Alan Fox. So as we dole out blame for what this is, let's not judge Spike too harshly. It must have been a tall task to adapt a 60-year-old movie based on a 70-year-old book. But when I saw Denzel was playing an aging hip hop mogul, my cringeometer began to go off, right? However, it's Spike and Denzel and Jeffrey Wright. If anybody can make it work, they could. But the dialogue came off as wooden to me. At best, they sounded like old heads. At worst, we were kind of entering caricature territory, to be honest with you. My next issue is there's a wide gulf between the talent of the main players in the movie and everybody else. I mean, Denzel Washington is my GOAT. He carried Gladiator 2. No one can oppose that statement. Jeffrey Wright is another heavy hitter whose career is full of notable roles and some damn good acting. Outside of them, there may be two other actors in the entire film that made the most out of their scenes. Everybody else just seemed happy enough to go along for the ride. And though this is a Spike Lee film, it seemed kind of light on some of the Spikeisms that we've come to love over the years. His infamous dolly shot in this movie was all of like 5 seconds. And the most Spike Lee thing about this movie is a completely unnecessary deluge of random Yankees fans yelling "fuck Boston" for about a whole minute too long. Seriously, the movie was so uneven that I assumed that this had to be something that carried over from the original 1963 movie directed by Kurosawa. But I actually went back and watched that on HBO Max and ended up liking that version way more than this one. In that film, the main character is an executive at a shoe company. I'll give them the fact that when you update the characters, their backgrounds and motivations, some things are going to change, right? For instance, the driver in this film is an ex-felon, so it made sense that the police were skeptical of him, but it was a sticking point for far too long, to the point where it became a distraction. But I felt a lot of the updates were unnecessary and muddied the water of effective storytelling. Going back to the original Kurosawa film, in the last portion of the movie, the police were the main drivers of everything that happened and finding the culprit of what happened. That obviously changed when you have Denzel Washington as the main player in this movie. Thinking back to Apple's decision to release this in very select theaters, it's telling, right? They didn't have much faith in this one, and it shows. And instead of going back to the drawing board, they were willing to finance a dud on both a legendary director and one of the greatest actors of all time's reps. Watching the Demon Slayer anime over the past couple of years prepared me for some of the exact things that people were complained about during this movie adaptation of the Infinity Castle arc, which let me know that those people who had issues haven't really been paying attention. Yes, there were pacing issues. I mean, for all of the hype and the waiting for this first film, I honestly felt that it was kind of light on the action that I wanted to expect. But tempering those expectations really allowed me to enjoy the story that was being told, even when it was background on characters that I may not have cared about. I mean, sometimes it felt like they would hype you up with a fight and just to give you 20, 30, or 45 minutes of dialogue and backstory, especially that last act. There were several times where I wanted to yell at the screen to get back to the action. That being said, the fights we did get were amazing. I mean, I feel like the things that Ufotable has been able to do with the action and the imagery could potentially take the medium to the next level. This has already become the highest grossing anime film of all time. I rewatched the last episode of the previous season right before this movie, and it felt like they picked up where they left off and even took it a level further. The fire looked real, the smoke looked real. I mean, there were some things that they did with the imagery that kind of boggled my mind for it to be such a long film. I'd say that I was ready for the next two movies now, but it'll be 2 and 4 years from now, respectively, and I'm sure that I'll have bigger fish to fry by then. But I'm 100% locked in for how this turns out for Tanjiro and the crew. Now, I'll say that I have not seen every movie that ever dropped, whether it be a blockbuster or indie films or straight to TV. I just watch the movies that I'm interested in. And even with that, I still haven't seen 28 Years Later. I haven't seen him. And there will probably be movies toward the end of this year that I will love. And I'll love to reconnect with you about them. So you hop in the comments, let me know what you guys thought about my thoughts about these movies, and let me know what great movies you've seen this year that I have not mentioned, and maybe we can start a dialogue. If not in the comments here, you guys should definitely follow me on Letterboxd, because that's where I put all of my reviews for the movies that I've watched so far and will continue to do so. Again, I'm CapnTrippz, and we've been talking movies. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Make sure you subscribe, like, and comment below. Until next time, peace.